Got a full house tonight. We have all school board members present. Present. Anderson. So 4.0. 4.0 is to approve the agenda. I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion on the agenda? Okay, all those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 5.0 is communication reports. Start with you, superintendent.
Do you want to do school perceptions first? Or?
Sure. That's
Okay.
fine.
Jason, do you want to let in, just for the group, the school perceptions, which will be coming on, was the community survey that went out, I'm guessing about a month ago, and was turned in. And now Scott is joining us to give a glance, if you will, at the results. Scott, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Very well, yes. So I was just giving them a little heads up, the board as well as the audience, that School Perception did the survey, and you're here to present an overview of the results.
Yes, I am. Let me share my screen here with y'all. Thank you for having me. All right. Is that showing up for you?
Right there it is.
There it is. Oh, it showed up on the screen right behind you all in so I had confirmation just as you said it. So here we are on April 13th, 2026. First, just to prepare you for what types of information you're going to see tonight, we've got background info, and that will look mostly familiar. A lot of it is reminding you of what was in your survey. We'll go through who took your survey with respondent information, results and analysis, and of course, wrap up and questions at the end. A reminder of who we are at School Perceptions. We've been doing this work since 2002, and we have helped more than 1,400 school districts navigate the strategic planning and referendum planning process. Your survey had a March 23rd deadline, so we're a few weeks out from that. We had 637 respondents, which was good for a 14% response rate. Our average is in the 14 to 18% range, so you're in that average range at the lower end. Given the number of respondents, there is a plus or minus 3.96% margin of error. That's just a function of the size of your response group, which is really a function of the size of your community, but it's an important number to keep in mind as we go through some of the results that you'll see tonight. First, ages of those who took your survey, 27%, the largest group, were in the 35 to 44 range, and 24% in the 45 to 54 range, so kind of those parent ages. The third group, 65 plus, 22% of your survey respondents were 65 plus. We always like to see them above 20% because those folks reliably turn out to the polls on election day, and they're the likely least connected directly with the schools, so it's important to hear from them via this survey. So we were happy with these percentages. 93% of your respondents have a primary residence in the district, 6% do not, and 1% are not sure. We always have 1 to 2% that are not sure. That 6% is going to be staff who live outside the boundaries, perhaps open enrollment families, things like that. 13% of your respondents own land that's taxed as agricultural land, and 5% own land that is taxed as commercial land. 97% of your respondents live in East Grand Forks, with 3% between Warren, Alvarado, Oslo, and Fisher. 22% of your survey respondents are staff members, which is a pretty usual range for us, and 48% are parents on the survey respondents. That leaves the remainder being your non-parent, non-staff group, and those are that's the biggest group in your community, so really important to hear from them through the survey. First time we're going to break down into a couple of those groups. So we asked, how would you like to receive information from us? And the purple bar represents the non-parent, non-staff survey respondents. So the only one that surpassed 50% for that group is mailed newsletters. That's a trend we're seeing pretty consistently on these surveys, is those folks want something in the mail they can hold on to and look at. Parents, on the other hand, the only thing that surpassed 50%, and it did so by a wide margin, was emails. So parents still want to receive emails from you or information from you via email. 47% of parents also said the website, and otherwise nothing was above 40% for either group. So now we're on to more of the content of your survey. So this is a reminder. We presented some financial background and we explained the difference between bonds and levies, as well as some context about where East Grand Forks sits compared to the rest of the area on residential property taxes. Then we explained some of the background around the early childhood edition with an estimated cost of $14.2 million in the survey. And we asked the question, would you support a referendum to build the early childhood edition? As you can see here, 66% of staff and 59% of parents said yes, so majorities in both of those groups. Among non-parent, non-staff respondents, 36% said yes, 47% said no. So neither reached 50% because you did have 17% that were not sure, but there were more no's than yeses among that group. Then we moved on to potential additional projects. For these, we asked folks to respond with a high, medium, or low scale. High meaning that it should be addressed immediately in this phase. Medium meaning it's important, but it should be addressed in a future phase. And low being not a priority. So this is going to be 2 slides because there were 8 projects. So the first one, I'm going to start in actually the right-hand column. So priority score. How we calculate that is based on someone who responded with a high priority, that gets scored as a 3. Medium priority is a 2, and low is a 1. And then we put all those together and we see where the score comes out. So the highest priority score was safety and security. And that score was a 2.33, so well above the medium range and in between that medium and high priority. As you can see in the middle column there, in the darkest green, that's how many responded that it's a high priority. So more than half of survey respondents said safety and security is a high priority. As we move down, these next 3 and actually on to the next slide are all pretty condensed together. So we've got a 2.08 for HVAC and plumbing systems, 2.06 for special education, and a 2.03 for electrical systems. As we move to the next slide, we have a 2.02 for the CTE edition at the high school and a 2.01 for updated classrooms and support spaces. So all of those 5 projects are within 7/100ths of each other. So there's a lot of tightness around where those priorities lie for your survey respondents. As we look at the final 2, exterior and site maintenance had a 1.90 priority score, and a new bus garage and maintenance building had by far the lowest priority score at a 1.54 in between that low and medium level. So we also wanted to break down the priorities of these projects by those subgroups that we've been talking about. So we've got staff, parents, and non-parents, non-staff. What this slide does is show where each project ranked for each of those groups. So if we start with the staff column, special education actually had the highest priority score for staff. Safety and security had the second highest priority score. Updated classrooms and support spaces had the third. Among your parents and your non-parents, non-staff, safety and security was the highest priority score. For your parents, HVAC and plumbing systems were 2, with electrical systems and classroom and support spaces tied at 3. Well, for your non-parents, non-staff, the CTE edition ranked 2nd, and HVAC and plumbing systems ranked 3rd. Of course, it's important to understand what your community thinks is important, but to get any of this work done, you'll need their support to pay for it. So we did explain how we got to the total number of $74.2 million to complete all of the projects. And we explain the tax impacts at some different potential bond referendum amounts. So we tested 30 million, 45 million, 60 million, and then that 74.2 total number. This slide, we're going to start with the non-parents, non-staff at the top, and I'll explain how the bars work. So the darkest green on the left with a 10% in it. That indicates that 10% of your non-parent, non-staff resident respondents would support the $74.2 million bond referendum. As we move to the right on that bar, the next lighter green is a 7, and that says 7% in it. That is the amount of respondents that said they would support a $60 million bond referendum. Now, as we move to the right along these bars, we add the numbers together because someone who would support a $74.2 million bond is extremely likely to continue that support as the number gets lower, and the same is true at each level. So we add those numbers together, which means that really for a $60 million bond referendum, you would have 17% support from non-parents, non-staff. Then we look at where each group crosses the 50% threshold. So for your non-parents, non-staff, that threshold is reached within the smaller referendum part, where we get to, let's see, 17, 30%, 41, we get up to 56% support for a smaller referendum. That gray bar indicates how many folks said not sure or they need more information. And then the red bar at the end is folks who said they would not support any referendum. So for parents, we surpassed that 50% threshold nearly in the $45 million bond referendum range, but it reaches it in the $30 million bond referendum range. And for staff, finally, we surpassed that within the $45 million range. So then what we have to do is a weighting exercise. So based on some census data, about 30% of your voters are going to be parents. About 70% of your voters are going to be non-parents, non-staff. So we have to weight the support from each of those groups at each of the different amounts. So we'll start with the $74.2 million. So if you look at that, and then to the right of the colon, the 0.30 represents the 30% of voters that will be parents. We multiply that by parent support for that level of bond referendum on the survey of 22%. On the other side of the plus sign, we do the same for non-parents, non-staff, with the 0.70 representing the 70% of voters that will be non-parents, non-staff, multiplied by the 10% support non-parents, non-staff had at that level. The number on the other side of the equals sign is those two added up, and that is what we would predict for support on the ballot if an election were held today. So for $74.2 million, that support level would be 13.6%, and this is where the margin of error comes in. 3.96% obviously still leaves you significantly below 50%. The same is true at 60 million and 45 million. When we get to the $30 million level, the weighted support shows 49.4%. That is below 50%, but it is within the margin of error. Importantly, though, when we look at something smaller than 30 million, the support jumps up to 62% weighted support, which is well above that 50% threshold and outside of that margin of error. So then we moved on to levy funding. We explained some background about the budget challenges in the district and how an additional $500,000 each year for the next 10 years would be used. We again outlined the estimated tax impact of that levy. And we asked, would you support a levy that provides approximately $500,000 each year for the next 10 years? This slide is showing your staff residents. 67% definitely or probably would support that. 7% would not, and 26% were undecided. Among parent residents, 64% would support it, 15% would not, and 21% are undecided. Finally, among non-parent, non-staff residents, 35% would support it, 40% would not, but 25% are undecided. So a quarter of your non-parent, non-staff resident respondents are undecided on this question. When we do the weighting exercise again, we take into account the yeses and we do that 30% and 70% equation again. And what that comes out to is 43.7% predicted support for that levy if the election were held today. We also asked some overall satisfaction questions. So these are on a scale of 1 to 4. What that means is that the median is a 2.5. So above a 2.5, you're leaning good or great. Below a 2.5, leaning fair or poor. On delivering a high quality education, all three groups are near or even above for your parents, a 3.0. Keeping the public informed, your staff and parents feel you're doing a pretty good job. Your non-parents, non-staff are just below that median number. The lowest scores for all three groups came on managing funds appropriately. And I would say that's extremely typical on these surveys because folks just got done being asked about providing additional funding. So they think, well, maybe you're not doing as good at that. So not a surprise to see those numbers be the lowest for all three groups. Building pride at the community. Once again, you are at or above that good marker of 3.0 with all three groups. Another way to look at this data is we look at the percent of total respondents who responded great or good for each metric, and you're above 50%. So more than half of respondents responded that you're doing good or great on each of these metrics. The overall score for two of them, you're just at and above good, the 3.0 mark. So delivering a high quality education and building pride in the community, you're at 3.01 and 3.02 respectively. Keeping the public informed, you're at a 2.77, and managing funds appropriately, you're right around that median of a 2.5. The final column there is the comparison percentile. So we look at all of the districts who take our surveys and use these questions, and we throw you into a pool and see where you come out. What it means is that you are better than 58% of districts on delivering a high quality education. 51% of districts at keeping the public informed, 31% of districts at managing funds appropriately, and 56% of districts at building pride in the community. The final overall satisfaction question we asked was on a scale of 0 to 10, how likely would you be to recommend the district to a friend or family member? The overall score in the district was a 7.13, well above the comparison score at 6.82, and putting you in the 61st percentile, meaning you're better than 61% of the districts that use our survey to ask this question. Notable here, we often look right away at kind of the 8 to 10 range because that's really an indicator of folks who are really excited about your district, and whenever it comes up in conversation are out there just singing your praises. And you had more than half of your survey respondents in that range. So totaling 53% of folks who are in that 8 to 10 big promoter range. So what did we learn? In summary, weighted support for a $30 million bond referendum is within the margin of error. There is majority weighted support for a bond referendum smaller than $30 million. Weighted support for levy funding is less than majority. However, there are a significant number of undecided respondents, including parents and non-parents, non-staff. If you recall, it was 21% of parents and 25% of non-parents, non-staff. Therefore, the board could consider asking for a levy and a bond referendum lower than $30 million and let East Grand Forks voters decide. And that is the end of my presentation, but I would be happy to take questions.
So is anyone from the board, again, as we talked about when this first came out, this will end up on a website. So everyone
Okay.
can go back through and, look at the data. Again, there's a task force that's meeting and will eventually bring a recommendation, of something to the board. I think we're looking at the first meeting in May. We're working a little more with the preschool, some reconfiguration and what possibly. But as far as Scott, he's the, as far as survey questions, the best person to ask. So it's a lot to take in, but if you have anything, we'll answer right now. Otherwise, you'll get it in a hard copy at some point or be able to, look at it. And again, public will be able to look at it.
And certainly too, if I know it is a lot of numbers to take in. And so if you come up with something after your meeting and realize, I should have asked, Kevin knows where to find me too. So certainly don't hesitate to follow up if you don't have anything right now.
Okay. Any questions from the board? No, a lot of numbers to chew on, but we appreciate you bringing it to us. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Scott.
Thank you all for your time tonight. Have a great meeting.
Thanks,
Thank
Scott.
you. All right. 5.2 is the enrollment update.
So in your board packet, if you looked, for the most part, well, we are down one student from a month ago at this point. There's no grade that's up or down more than one. We've had some kids come and go, just a singleton. One's 12th grader left, one 10th grader came. But for the most part, we're right where we were. So I don't have much more on that.
Any questions on enrollment? 5.3 is finance.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Right, the fun and not so fun news. If we're looking, starting with the board to actual on page 1. We'll start with the revenues and we're gonna look at the local other revenues. And we are above budget rate that, or expected budget, and that is mostly due to our MA dollars. They are up from the prior year. So that is where that budget change is. And then we're gonna jump down to general fund expenses. And we're gonna start with purchase services. And the major change shift with that is that we made our deposit for our boiler project this month compared to last year when we did New Heights. I believe it was a month later than this year, or so that is where that's big shift is there. And then we're gonna jump down to, gotta make sure my lines are here, supplies. We are pushing the limit on where I feel comfortable this year, so we will be watching pretty closely and asking the questions, is it really necessary? Going forward to the end of the year to kind of make sure we can keep that in what we budgeted for. And then finally on this page, equipment. We have made all of our major equipment purchases for the year, so that will stay where, or should stay where it's at right now. That's all the questions I had on that page. Any questions there? Okay, moving on to our other funds. Not too much to change the report there. Brandy did say in food service that expenses are for, food expenses are going up a little bit with our transportation costs raising. So like a few years ago, those don't always go down after the prices come down. So I expect those to be a little bit higher going forward. That's all I had on that page. And then finally, our treasurer's report. We are spending about 1.3 to 1.5 less than we were last year at this time, which is our difference in our revenue and our projected deficit for the year. So that's right on par where we expect. And then right now we are going through the process of going through outstanding checks and making sure that people that have not cashed their checks yet will get letters saying that they need to. So that's what I had to report tonight.
Any questions? on the Board?
No.
Okay, Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, no administration department heads tonight, so any committee reports?
Well, I'm gonna give,
You're gonna give
suppose,
yours.
yeah, just, and I'll keep it
Okay.
somewhat short here. For the most part, between budget, some special ed, that's consuming most of the time. Just an update again on the school perceptions or the nexus, the studying of, facilities as well as operations. Matt hosted at CMS last week the second meeting of the community task force. And again, thank you to all that participated. It ended up going another 3.5, pushing 4 hours. Again, the group was very engaged and I can't thank the group enough. Again, more will come with that. I would also, and I think I saw Ross back there. Thank you to Ross, Pape and Tyler Driscoll pulled a group of, I guess I didn't count, roughly probably 15, farm people, and we had another meeting and had some, I'm gonna say, good conversation, learning experience as part of this. And so, thank you, to them as well. That was last week. And like I say, we're looking at some more kind of work on the preschool before, a final, presentation comes. And like I said, I think we're leaning, we were on Friday, Matt and I were with, Nexus again, and, Laura and myself were this morning. And so I think we're looking at the first meeting in May, to have a committee recommendation and start some more of the board conversation at that point. I don't have a copy, but that, career fair, or the, Chad asked me to share that with you. We'll have another more board meeting before, but, I think he said, and this, I got it about 2 weeks ago, there's 44 businesses at that time that will be on site as part of that. It might be larger than that right now, but if you want to attend and at all stop in, you'd be more than welcome to, from the board standpoint. And that's why we're giving it now instead of, few days in front of it. Before we get to, I'll give a few comments on the budget stuff. But one thing just to keep in mind as we go forward, depending on what the next step is, we may be interested in looking at calendars and seeing if we should have a special meeting, like next Monday I'd mentioned, depending on where we get to. So, Lynn and I met and I said I'd mention just some budget, like high level stuff before we get there, and we can definitely then have more conversation. But, just to kind of keep in mind that, this has been ongoing. We've talked about, this for every meeting for last several months. As far as, several, have come out, what about an operating levy? That's part of the study going on. And I guess in my short term here, one of the first meetings I was at, there was discussion, and so that's not a new conversation, but, anyway, just to bring everyone up to speed that is either here or online, we came and last meeting, administration was directed to come up with the 1.15, whether the whole thing moves forward, whether part of it moves forward, whether none of it moves forward. That's where we're at this time. I've had a couple questions on, there's the sheet that's out there with, the recommendations, there's roughly 12,000 left. But keep in mind when, people actually become part of this, depending if you're where you are step and lane for most of our positions or single or family insurance, that'll all get eaten in there, and we're confident it'll actually be, go the other way a little bit. How much, it's hard to predict. I will speak for, the team, the administrative team, that, no one's taken this lightly. And, I commend them, for working collaboratively. There were tears at times. There were some, I don't want to say heated because that sounds bad, but in-depth conversation. And, what's in front of you is not taken lightly. And we understand everything, affects students, and people one way, shape, or form. So again, I know most of them are sitting here, and I thank them for, the work done. And obviously we'll have more discussion. A few of the typical questions, just so we're all on, one thing that's come out several times, why no supplies on there? Okay, or equipment, as the budget shows. You've cut several times, not only educational supplies, but also extracurriculars. And so most of the group felt that there's just not a lot left there, I'll never say you can't cut anything more, but you need a certain amount. And the same thing, as most, families are feeling, certain costs are going up. It's, it's hard to control. The electric costs, the fuel costs are obviously going up. I would mention, if you recall back to the auditors this fall, we're rated about 80% of our budget goes to people, meaning salary, benefits, those costs. They say between 75 and 80%. So, we're on that higher side, but for a school, you are a people business. And so we're there. the purchase services, and again, this came back when you had your, we had the presentation of the budget, another 3.4 million. When you put those two together, that gets us to 92%, you know, there's not a lot in supply or, you know, equipment. The one other very common question, and it's rightfully so, and sometimes timing is not the best, but you know, like there's purchase of tables for the cafeteria, 40,000, 43, 44. That comes out of the food service budget. That money can't go to pay, it can go salaries and food service, but it can't go to third grade teacher, second grade teacher, whatever. And so it can go to equipment, and tables are actually new in the last 1 or 2 years that it can be used for. Otherwise, it actually had to be in the kitchen area. And so that is why that's on there. It's been recommended. Again, other things such as secretaries, we had that conversation. Would we go down from 2 to 1 in each building? It was not, again, not chose at this point. Custodial, I mean, everything was listed and certain things came out and again, not taken lightly. A few other things and then we'll move on. And again, looking for any ideas, appreciate people that have emailed, had conversations, because that is where we think of other things. As you're aware of, we're looking at any grant we can come across. You know, Soraya's done several grants. Laura's working on a preschool one right now that could bring some funding. Most of the time, they're not specific for like, you know, a grant for a second grade teacher, first grade teacher, you know. The one with preschool, it's because of the process we're going through to kind of get, you know, in a center type thing, we could probably qualify. Solar, you know, again, the long term, we're looking at whatever we can. And then lastly, before we move on, keep in mind our board policy is 8 to 25% of unrestricted, unreserved funds. If everything ends as we think it will towards the year, we're just over 7%. And so, again, we're definitely open for conversation and we'll do whatever work is needed. But, as I've told you before, to do nothing, I don't think is an option. Whether you do the whole thing or not, we go into it with our eyes wide open. And we'll go from there. So,
Yeah, but you've already taken some steps, right, as far as like putting off.
so like we talked last time, like typically a bus fleet, we have, well, we dropped a route. We have 18 that we typically use. There's four or five for extracurriculars. They then rotate into the typical, you know, day to day. We've pulled that, as well as, you know, when you take like, I think we have 5 Suburbans, well, 3 plow trucks. There's a Suburban that is at the bus garage for plowing. Then you start getting into the big, you know, like the mowers that are 30 to 50, 60,000. Typically, there's one of those on an annual. We've pulled that back. We've pulled teacher computers. We're stretching. I'm looking at Jason another year. We usually get a number of like interactive, the whiteboard technology. We've pulled that stuff back out right now. So that's not in that 1.15. We can't go forever, you know, and I guess one other thing is you asked Matt, you know, someone asked, or a few people have asked, what about curriculum? Can, you know, we pull that from the cycle? The tough part is redact. We're not where we need to be for curriculum. And the other piece is, you know, we students and staff deserve to update. Again, we can be frugal and not get extra, you know, type deal, but unless you direct us differently, we need a curriculum that the state approves for the READ Act. So
And when is that due by?
that's due for next year, you know, and like I say, our current, and I'm just gonna pick, you know, like the stuff at the elementary, it doesn't meet right now. We may go with the same publisher, but the current edition we have does not meet, right, wrong, or indifferent. And again, there's choices, you know, if we were on social studies or something, it might be a different case, whether we could draw, you know, back a year or two. And again, like I said, on spot, yeah, we always have to be frugal, but, so anyway, that's where we're at for that. And like I say, when we get into actual talking specifics, we can have more conversation.
Any committee reports?
I don't have anything. Oh, other than we did get a notice of intent from the paras. I have not gotten dates yet, you know, or anything to negotiate, but that did come, so I'll work.
Hey, 6.0 is the consent agenda and I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 7.0, opportunity for citizens to speak. So we have quite a few. Get organized a little bit here. We have some ground rules, and so we're gonna talk about those real quick. Make sure when you go to the middle that your mic is on so everybody can hear you. You get a limit of 3 minutes per discussion. It's not a conversation that we have with you. It's you informing us of what you'd like to know so that we can talk about it when we talk about this topic. We'll listen to it. No naming names. We would prefer that you don't do that. If you do that, I'll shut you down. And I don't want anybody to get real crazy. Let's keep this not contentious. If you do get crazy, I'll gavel you down. And I've never had to do that, so let's not make that something we have to do. So we are going to start with Mayor Mark Olsted.
Hold it down for a second. There you go.
Yep. Welcome.
Thanks for the guidance. Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mark Olsted, the mayor of City of East Grand Forks. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you for the board for allowing me to speak tonight. I will be addressing the school resource partnership that we have as a city and the school district. I've been notified of the possible cutting of the SRO position for the 26-27 school year. I want to reiterate to you in the commitment the city has to this partnership and emphasize its importance. I believe the partnership is a win-win for both the district and the city. We can dedicate an officer within our schools every day and contribute to the safety and security of our schools. We have heard from both community members and district staff alike that having an SRO in schools has been beneficial and is much appreciated. If the SRO position is cut, there is a situation where a patrol officer is needed. We cannot guarantee the response time or the availability of this officer as they might be engaged in other calls. I don't want the safety and security of our children and staff to be at risk. Your decision as a school board could be a negative impact on the city's general fund too, as we don't have the additional wages for the officer earmarked for our 26 budget. The city budget was approved last December. We approved our budget knowing that we had an SRO contract in place with the school district. I believe that a formal meeting with city council, staff, and myself in the school district is needed to discuss this partnership before a decision is made. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am committed to the safety and security of our children, staff, and community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just leave it on.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, we have quite a few that want to talk about the speech team. I don't know if you want to come up as a group, if you want to come up individually. I want to make it as efficient as possible, so completely up to you. We'll start with Tanner Miller.
Hello, board members. My name is Tanner Miller, and I am here today to share the incredible impact the speech program has on District 595. I have dedicated 9 years to coaching countless students to the state and even national stage, and have seen firsthand the tremendous impact that this program has on our student body. I have the honor to speak as a trusted representative for my students and their concerns about what these cuts to the speech program mean to this activity that they cherish and hold dear to them, pardon. As such, I would like to share my thoughts. To be direct, this proposal is one that does not have the student body's best interest in mind. There has been discussion on reduced enrollment in the speech team. No one will deny this fact. As many programs can attest to, our drop in attendance coincides directly with the COVID-19 pandemic and left many activities across the district and the state with attendances lower than they were accustomed to. However, through our concentrated efforts, our team has grown nearly twice its size over the last 3 years alone, going from 6 participants up to 11 this season. This effort has been driven directly by our student body, using their experience in this activity to engage with their peers and show them that public speaking can not just be fun, but rewarding and enriching. And helping all of these students find and better understand their voice, granting them a sense of belonging. This drastic and rapid improvement in attendance has led to our cost per student to decline over these past 5 years as well, from a peak of $3,500 per student in 2021 to our current level as of last year of $1,494. Only a $40 difference in comparison to other programs in the region. Additionally, our program has continued to see these wins while not yet being able to utilize our greatest strength available to us, managing tournaments. The East Grand Forks speech team has a long history of managing tournaments, and as our team grows to a more comfortable size, this option for a home meet becomes a very real possibility. This ability for not just our faculty, but the rest of our student body to see the hard work our students put in, while also assisting in generating revenue for the district. As my time comes to an end, I want to directly ask the board to refute this part of the proposal. We understand and sympathize with the budgetary requirements the district needs to meet. Our biggest ask is to look past what your spreadsheets are telling you and see exactly what this investment in our student body means. As such, I have provided all of you with a packet full of letters from alumni of East Grand Forks and the speech team themselves to address what impact this program has had on their educational, professional, and personal growth as individuals. I do hope that we are able to find a time to sit down together to talk about what these budgetary needs are from this program. But for this time, I call on the board to please refute this part of the budget in cutting the speech program. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. All right, next we'll hear from Mark Invick.
Thanks
Hi.
for allowing me to speak today. My name is Mark Invick of 705 11th Street Northwest here in East Grand Forks. I have 3 children in the district and all of them participate in both athletics and arts. My daughter has participated in soccer and band since her freshman year. This year, she was captain of the girls' soccer team and has been captain of the speech team for the last 2. She also won the AAA award for her excellence in all 3 aspects of her academics. She wanted me to share that she has worked really incredibly hard to increase participation in speech since COVID and to foster an environment where kids of all abilities have an opportunity to shine and feel a sense of belonging. Regarding my other son in speech, his involvement is a little bit different. I was there when coach announced they would be cutting kids from the basketball team. Neither of my boys had aspirations to be the next LeBron James or Michael Jordan. They wanted to participate with their peers and have an opportunity to belong. So when that moment came, both my boys made the decision to not to pursue basketball any longer. My youngest was encouraged to get into speech. Speech filled that void for him by allowing him to compete with his peers in a whole different way. If you don't believe me, he's back there. Ask him about the speech meet where he beat his sister. Sorry, I had to bring that up. I'm also here in another role tonight. I serve as the HR director for a nonprofit organization that provides supports to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. One of our roles is to advocate for individuals in the community who face unique challenges. Both of my kids, along with the coaches, have worked really hard to ensure that this speech team is an inclusive environment. I've seen this group of kids interact. These kids show respect for one another, and they help create a safe environment where everyone feels that they belong. While I'm primarily here as a parent encouraging you not to cut the speech program, I am also here to advocate for those students facing their own unique challenges who through speech are given an opportunity to overcome these challenges within a completely integrated environment. Speech provides these students with a chance to be a part of something without asking for accommodations. It's an environment that's inherently inclusive. It's so inclusive that this year, one of the students used their platform to educate people all around the state about some of the challenges that kids with unique abilities face. While I am known for being an analytics guy, I do not believe that this type of impact can be quantified sheerly by numbers. I would encourage the school board to consider delaying a final decision on the speech issue until this can be looked a little more into. And while I have a couple of logical and financial suggestions for the board, I think my time is running out, so I'll leave you with this. Not every student is going to make a varsity roster. Not every student is going to find their place in band or choir or even on a stage, but every student deserves a place to belong.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. I'm not gonna say this right. Roberto Kerzisi, K-E-R.
Hello, board members.
Oh,
This weekend, I've been going back and forth on what to say in defense of speech in this program. I can recall to you the impact that this program has had on me as a student, former alumni of this program, though I am sure and confident that the letters that you have received in those packets will speak to that front very well. I can also echo the sentiments of my students this past week upon this news, words of anxiety and terror at the idea of this speech program being cut. And I can tell you about the sleepless nights I've had this week, wondering what I do and say to my students to calm them and get them into our competitive mindset for our section tournament tomorrow. I can tell you about the time that I take after practices to compose myself because I am so proud of the students and the work that they have done this season. I am instead going to tell you what I can bring to the table as the proposed head coach following the next season, because there are simply other alternatives that would relieve the budgetary constraints and keep this incredibly successful and relevant academic activity running. I bring to this program a history of coaching speech. I've coached the Stillwater, Minnesota speech team, as well as assistant coach the Brooklyn Debate League for students in 7th grade up to 10th grade. I've been doing that for the past 3 years. I bring a commitment to all my students to make them a better speaker than they were yesterday. And if you're looking for competitive results, I've turned novice speakers into state competitors in that very same year. For personal growth, ask the parents of the students I coach, and they will vouch for me 100% about the exponential growth and development these students have gone through in this past season. I also work in the arts nonprofit sphere. I am very familiar with the budgetary constraints and having to fight for these things, and I understand this decision does not come easily to anybody. But I also understand that the cost of this program is a very attainable amount for us to fundraise for. There are sponsorships we can seek to subsidize the cost for travel. We can host tournaments, as Tanner mentioned. What we need mainly from the school is support. We need to have more referrals to our program. We need more students to even be aware that this program exists. We, more so, need a guarantee that the school will have our back and keep East Grand Forks as the respected, highly competitive organization that it is and has been. I want to tell the board that I am wholly committed to the success of my students, this school, and this team. And I am willing and able to do whatever it takes to make sure that this program is able to provide the essential services that the future generations of this school and our current students desperately need. Thank you.
thank you. All right, Chase Marcotte.
Hello, members of the board. I'm Chase Marcotte, and I am a member of the speech team. And I would like to speak on why I would incredibly encourage to keep this incredibly integral activity. Speech teaches students many things. It can teach them public speaking skills that they would have never gotten previous, and it can teach those with disabilities, such as myself, to push through and make sure that they can speak in front of a crowd. Speech can also help students make friends. I have made friends both in this school and outside of school through speech, people I would have never met outside of this program. It can also have a feeling of teamwork and belonging. I have done a few extracurricular activities, and I feel speech is the most impactful to me personally because it is the one in which I feel I most belong. There are also people who are aware of the speech team as of current, who wish to join next year, and cutting this integral program would cut them off from that opportunity to join this incredible program. And then I must ask, although I know I'm not going to get a response, how much money cutting speech actually saves the school, and if those losses could be distributed elsewhere in order to ensure that speech stays. And a final point I would like to make before I end this off is all I have used with this speaking are these little note cards with preview points. I have made up this entire speech on the fly. Therefore, I think that can go to show how important speech could possibly be to the public, to the abilities, to the friendship, and just in general to these students. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, and Madeline Lee.
Hi, everyone. I graduated from East Grand Forks Senior High School in 2022, and I'm very excited to be back and speaking on behalf of the speech team. I am a proud alum of the East Grand Forks speech team, and I want to thank you, first of all, for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I want to start by acknowledging something that many of us have witnessed and that Tanner alluded to earlier in his own speech. COVID hit this team very hard. Like so many activities, speech faced setbacks, uncertainty, and loss of momentum. There were only 4 competing members on the team during my senior year. But as an alum, it's been incredibly meaningful to watch this team rebuild. Seeing students once again find their community through speech is something truly special and something worth protecting. Some of my fondest memories from high school come from my time on the speech team. I had the opportunity to attend the state competition 3 times, and those experiences were about so much more than just performance. They were about connection. I built close relationships with my teammates as we spent long hours practicing together and always felt like I had a place where I belonged. For many students, that sense of belonging can make all the difference. Being a member of the speech team taught me skills that extended far beyond high school. It gave me the confidence to stand up for what I believe, writing and research skills that guided me through my undergraduate degree, leadership skills to guide and support others, and a sense of responsibility to represent something bigger than myself. These are not just extracurricular outcomes, these are life skills. Even more importantly, the relationships that I built didn't end at graduation. I formed long-lasting friendships, many of them sitting behind me, and through those connections, I was introduced to opportunities in college and beyond. That network, built through speech, continues to support me in everything that I do today. I'm currently an MPA student at the University of North Dakota, where I advocate for students both on campus and in the greater community through my roles in student government. The ability to speak clearly, think critically, and connect with others, all skills that I developed on the speech team, are at the core of the work that I do every single day. I carry those lessons with me into leadership roles that I take on. I urge you to consider the lasting impact that this program has had on students, not just during high school, but for years after they've left. The speech team is not just an activity. For me, it is a foundation of confidence, leadership, and community. Please continue to invest in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that is all that I had turned in. We appreciate every one of you coming and speaking your truths, and we appreciate, that we can take that in and consider it while we make these hard decisions. So 8.0 is district business, and 8.1 is to talk about the budget reductions for the 2026-27 school year, as presented and attached in board book. So I'll make a motion to approve, and then I'll take a second, and then we'll discuss on if we need to make amendments and what we're actually gonna approve.
I'll second.
All right, questions and discussion?
I'll start again.
Sure.
you know, like Kevin mentioned, this is kind of open right now, right? So
Yeah.
to decide
Yep.
what we want to do. We're just gonna have these discussions. And going, I've spent a lot of time like everybody else going through these, and I appreciate all of the time that everybody took to put this list together, because I can't even imagine, I wasn't a part of that committee, but I can't imagine how difficult it was to put these positions on here. So I appreciate everybody that brought us to this point. I would like to look at removing as many of these as possible. And how do we do that? Moving forward with the deficit. Next year brings a possibility, like we talked about, the operation levy. And I hope everybody in here sees what we're up against and what we're, you know, the opportunity we have with this levy, and please go out and share, you know, the opportunity we have to move forward with this levy. The cost of operating a school has gone up significantly, and the funding hasn't kept up with that increase. It's just where we are, and we need to do something. And the alternative of having an operation levy is more of these budget cuts, which we all want to avoid. So, and getting to where I'm at with this list, it's hard to talk about this, what I want to keep, because I want to keep all of them, and I'm sure everybody would agree with that. It's tough to go through this and pick and choose, because it's all valuable to our school. Everybody is valuable. And you're all here for a reason. You know, everybody on this list is at our school for a reason. It's just a product of the situation that we're in, where we have to deal with this. So when I look at this list, there are some things that stand out to me that I would like to take off the list, and I'll go ahead and go through those. Number one, like Mr. Olsted talked about the SRO, I believe the safety of the staff and students is, in my opinion, our number one priority. And I know there are alternatives, having the police department on call, but like he said, that nothing is guaranteed there. I think our SRO officer has built a great relationship with the staff and students. And I think that is great for prevention, for developing a relationship with children, as far as, what police officers represent. And he brings a lot to the table as far as on his end too, of how he can help students in each school, and the experience that he has with all the situations. We would lose that from calling the police department and them sending whoever is available. And that might not result that might not be as good of a result as it is with somebody who is familiar with these students and the staff. So I would like to remove that. I would like to.
Matt, before you go on, can we like talk about position by position?
Yeah,
Cause then if you listed, we're gonna forget what you said.
okay.
So if we go like SRO, what is everybody feeling about SRO? Then I think that'd be just a little more efficient.
Yeah.
And then we'll go back. Okay. So thoughts on the SRO position?
I'm 50-50 on it, because it is nice to have them when they're there, because they need, Officer Gunderson is needed a lot. And to not have someone there does bother me at some of the schools, especially if a police officer can't go. But he also has to follow rules within the school where other police officers don't have to. Right? The way that the handling like different things, or no?
I guess I can't speak 100%. I mean, they have different rules than we have.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean,
The
he's an
school-
officer. No, he's an officer, I think, just like anyone else. I mean, there's things he can do that maybe we can or can't do. But again, and I guess the other piece I would throw, this is nothing in regards to the person we have right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone, I mean, I have nothing.
It's dispositional, it's
I mean,
not.
'cause there's no guarantee it's the same person it has been, and I think the city would like to
Yeah.
keep that, but I want that out there.
Yeah. I don't know, I'm 50-50 on it because of that.
So I feel like I'm in a really interesting position, because just a few weeks ago, I was in your shoes on the other side of the table. And I wanted so badly for the board to just trust our decisions and trust that we knew what we were doing when we made that budget. And so that's what I want to do. I want to trust that you made this decision with the right intentions. I can't see as a school administrator doing my job without an SRO. Especially if you're really considering a level 4 facility. I think we really need to consider having an SRO on staff. But my position tonight is gonna be to trust that you guys did the work and that your administrators in the district and you made the right decisions.
So the only thing I would say is that, I think I agree with Mayor Olstad that we should have at least had a conversation about it. Right, like had a conversation with the city and maybe sit down and have, you know, could this be funded otherwise? Although you already said you talked about your budget, but maybe. So I think that we should maybe just table this particular position and have the conversation with the city about it.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I'm going in there. I mean, the one part about this, these aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These are people, these are student opportunities, these are programs. And if these weren't there, there would be another 5 or 10 of them and the room would be just as filled. And nothing here is easy. Unfortunately for us, we have to do the right thing from a school standpoint and make sure that we're financially stable for years to come. And right now, where we sit, we're not. We all understand that. And that's why it's tough. Because these aren't numbers. These are people. And it's hard. And the SRO, obviously, we want safety. And there's a lot of things that we've went into and we've researched other school districts. And there's a lot of school districts that don't have that. And that's not saying that we don't want it, because he's been worked hard this year because of the challenges that the kids have. But if it's something that, if you're going to make me pick between a teacher in a classroom and an SRO, I'm probably going to pick a teacher in the classroom.
The other thing I would say, Matt, to your point about like getting an operating levy, so that wouldn't come for another year and a half.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And that's $500,000 and we're 1.5.
yeah. So I had us cutting about 750.
Well, the other thing we should throw out, and again, there's a few people from our task force that and again, more will come from that. The question came up about going higher than it's per pupil on an operating. So we
Sure.
chose a number to pull, 250 per kid, which would generate about 500,000. Now, keep in mind, we're one of 87 districts in the state that don't have anything. Okay, the mean is, I didn't bring it with me, 860 some dollars. The median is 600 and some dollars. But the question came, what about going, 300 a kid or 400 a kid? And Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, the challenge was, you saw where it pulled and pulled with other things. It's gonna take work to get 500 passed. And again, confident everyone here and in the community can get it done. But to go higher, they would not recommend it at this point. Now, once you get one, it doesn't mean you come back every year, but they've seen more success if you want to up it $100 or 200. Now, and again, some around us, just north of us, I believe is 1,900 per student. That's per year. Fisher just passed 1,400 and some. Thief River's 900 a student. Yeah, I mean, if we had 900 student, we wouldn't be sitting here. Yeah, it doesn't mean you still have to manage your funds, but with 2,000 kids, just go 1,000. The math's pretty easy. That's 2 million. Yeah, so again, and the other thing is we've pulled back. Like I said, we've cut just about 400,000. So a 500,000 doesn't bring everything back. You're gonna have to buy a bus at some point. You're gonna buy, and so it's a challenge,
So the numbers I came up with just were kind of, I guess, we started this school year, I think, at about a $400,000 deficit, and that's kind of what I got this back down to, what we would start next year with, was about a $400,000 deficit. See where the numbers come in next year as far as with the operation levy comes in, and then revisit this again next year. That's just kind of.
But if it doesn't pass,
then
Right.
we would be looking at making more cuts next year.
It could be
there could be
potentially twice
Deeper.
as much.
Yeah.
It could be deeper.
But I guess my thought was, we have this potential opportunity with the levy let's try and reduce this to hold off one more year for some of these.
Okay, well, let's start, yeah. So let's start with the school resource officer. I feel just respectfully, we should have a conversation.
I'm good with that. I'm absolutely with that. I would love to have a conversation with the city.
Want me to keep going?
If you like, certainly can.
I guess just the next on my list, no particular order, well, I guess let's get down to it. The activities, the cross country and speech. I mean, before tonight, I had made up my mind that I want to take that off. And I like, again, I appreciate where the committee came from, is trying to reach from every area of our school, to not leave it to show that they're doing everything they can to try and cut from every avenue. I guess I look at it like the school it exists for the kids. And we always tell our kids education has to come first, and it does. But from the kids' perspective, from a student's perspective, these extracurricular activities, I think we heard a lot of this tonight, these extracurricular activities mean so much to them. We always talk about the mental health being so important in our school district. I think this plays a big part of that. And again, these two activities are such a small role in our whole basket of everything we have. But I just think that the amount of money that we're saving isn't worth what we would put these kids through. And I just think that we should look at keeping them no matter what, whether or not it comes to having to find a different way to fund them. I think we should just try to avoid cutting them altogether.
Thoughts on speech and cross country?
I like that idea. I think it should be all activities should have to fundraise and earn money I mean, some are really expensive and it's not bad. I know the sports boosters does it and the music boosters does it too, you know? I mean, it's not a horrible idea for all of them to fundraise in some way to help keep their activity at a lower cost for the district and for their fees.
Many do. Many do.
They do, yeah.
So what are you leaning towards? Keeping, cutting?
And again, something's gonna have to come out in a motion eventually, because technically you can't pull, you
I
know.
would say cut them. I judge a speech competition every 2 years. I love speech, but I know there's other ways for students to get involved in speech. Our district isn't the only district. There's potentials of asking other districts, or there's other options as well.
Can I better understand how that came?
So what it came from, and again, I'll try and like say, if it's informational, we can give. I don't wanna, hey, what would you pick? Because again, it's hard. It was a tough process. We looked at kind of everything we could. Like I said, we talked about secretaries, and what would it mean to, go from, for the most part, 2 in each building to 1? How would we manage? What does that affect? The same, what about cutting them AP in every building? Had conversations and went through a process. When it came to extracurriculars, again, we know how important it is. A lot of us have had kids in there or have kids in or participated ourselves. We don't disagree. But we felt if we're recommending, kind of like with the SRO piece, if we're recommending things from different areas, how do you not, put something? It's about 3.5 to 4%, very similar to what the budget is. And so that's where it came from. Not that anyone, again, whether you're in speech, whether you're in robotics, musical, basketball, I mean, I agree 100% what they do for kids. But on the other hand, what does a teacher do or a para do? And that's the tough dilemma that we all went through. Yeah, it's not a huge, but again, the budget itself for extracurriculars, 1.4 in expenses. You take off 300,000-400,000, comes out to be just over $1 million is what we spend. And again, it is awesome, but that's where it came from, going, we feel if we're going to recommend, the educational piece, we should probably have something on there. And again, originally it came with 800. I don't know if it would have been on there with 800 or not. We didn't go through that process. We were asked to bring the full amount. And, again, I don't, it was part of a process. Some could argue we should have more from there instead of education, depending on where you stand. And so we did somewhat of a percentage, and then we looked at, looked at participation numbers, looked at costs, and had some conversation. The two that are on there, I should say three, boys and girls cross country and speech, have had lower participation. Don't disagree. It has went up from, the numbers you all got were 25, 20, 24, 25. So we were comparing, they had 9, and they're up to, I think they said 11. Yeah, it has grown some. It was 4, or what, that's true. Everything that was said is true.
Middle school.
That is middle school, 7th and 8th, both of those cross country too. And I don't have 7 in boys and 8 in girls, or vice versa. That's 7, 12. That's middle school and high school.
Another one I had taken off here was the social worker reduction. And I just feel like, especially after the year that we've had, I don't think we can afford to go down one social worker.
The person resigned.
Well, it did, you would have
The
to
resident.
hire to replace.
That's another one that I would never put on the list, but again, I'm gonna trust that the administrators are making the best decision for their school. I'm gonna trust that there's a plan in place for mental health support for students and for barriers to be removed and access to community resources. I'm gonna trust that that's gonna be in place with that removal. Because I can't imagine not having a social worker in a school.
Well, it's not to say, again, we have so many on the mental health support team, throughout the district, between counselors, social workers, behavior interventionists. We will, we had the conversation on Friday. If it is approved to go forward where we're at, we'll talk just like we did last year and restructured possibly where people are. Don't disagree. But again, you go back to, we need teachers. And again, we need social workers, need counselors, we need everyone. But somewhere in the business, we got to come up with a chunk of money. And so, yeah, I agree. We should probably have 4 more.
So if you keep the social worker, I'm just doing some quick math.
Well, and now keep in mind, the one that's on here, you probably won't get one that cheap. You remember what,
Yes.
there's some public stuff I'm
yep.
not going to share, but most starting out, again, a basic teacher with, and this is public, it was 66,000 some odd dollars with single insurance and, step and lane. Most of the time, it's going to be higher.
Okay.
So,
So this is the savings if we do not replace the person that we
correct,
had in that role.
correct.
Okay, so
Yes.
let's say you bump that, okay. Then you have the contract with the city, and then you have boys and girls cross country and speech. We're already looking at adding back into about $220,000.
Yep.
Good.
And then,
You talked about teachers, yeah.
Yes, we haven't talked about.
yep, then I have 2 teaching roles that I would like to take off that list. And again, this is my opinion, and again, we all would like to take all these off the list. I'm just trying to get to where I think we could place, like I said, where I think we could get us into next year to see what happens with funding and the levy. So the 2 roles that I had taken off of there was for one was the kindergarten, because they're going from 17 to 20. That's a big jump to 3 students. And it is such a young age. And then the other one was the 3rd grade. I feel like we're gonna need to go to 7 next year. And we have that one at 6.
Typically, we don't have a 17.
Yeah, I would say.
That's a low number for kindergarten class.
Is it?
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
usually it's closer to
Usually it is
20.
about
Don't you-
19, 20.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I will talk, the group has talked about 3rd grade and
Mhm.
Yes.
I guess I will say it is honest. There are certain classes, meaning grades or classes that are harder than others, have more challenges. We have one coming up, but there again, right now we're looking at numbers. Now, not to say there aren't, something that doesn't change. We could lose 1 or 2 of our high flyers. We're working with one right now, might not be here. That changes. Typically you'd say 1 kid, 2 kids doesn't make. But that is, and I'm going to speak from the admin team, one of the higher concerns. And it wasn't a cut. We just didn't add one on right
Yeah.
now.
Maybe
And
the highest number.
and the other thing, I would say is, and again, it's harder with the middle and high school because again, Brian and I met again working today. We're, assuming something comes out tonight, we will take the next step of putting positions, actual people to it. It may come out where we could, you know, be 2.5, like middle school's actually at 2.5 right now. You know, of an actual reduction. If it was, we might end up something 2.5 or 3, you know, and so it might come back, like I say, once we get our, I'm gonna call it marching orders, that we come back and go, you know, even when we put names to faces, does that 12,000 go away and become 40,000? It's possible, but it's hard to predict, you know, until we actually start. And keep in mind, and I say this for the public, when it says a kindergarten, it doesn't mean one of those teachers necessarily.
In
There's a
kindergarten, yeah,
Branding
just-
process that
yeah.
most people have elementary license, you know, K, say, we would then look, and the same, you know, at the high school, there's certain licenses. So, I mean, it is possible that, you know, a number may go up. You know, I'm not gonna say, we're not gonna find 10 teachers at the high school, I'm telling you. Yeah, you know, I mean, but there might be a little wiggle room.
I'm gonna be very firm on that third grade section. Having 7, it has to. Like, I've been there, I've had those kids, that cannot change, that has to be at 7 sections. Cause all you're gonna do is you're gonna set those third grade teachers up for failure if they don't, but if they don't have that, I mean, they're tough right now and there's 7 sections and it's just a challenging class. They're a great group of kids, but it's very difficult and takes a lot of energy for those adults and those teachers that are in those classrooms. And that has to be at 7.
I do agree with you, Josh. I wasn't agreeing with you earlier last week, but my opinion completely changed.
No, and we talked about it, you know, at length quite a few times, and I agree with you. I think it's gotta be at 7 as well.
So that's what I had for teachers. I had taken it off the kindergarten, taken it off the second. And again, I was trying to get to a number.
Yeah.
So whether it's kindergarten or a different grade level, I had 2 teachers and then I also had, I don't know what we had, did we have a number per para? That
What happens, we're working through the process. We're not there. And one of the reasons is, and again, we'll get there as quick as we can, but, you know, that's not a licensed position where, you know, most are local and state, where some of your teachers will leave, you know, town, you know, if they're reduced there, you know, or it's more important to find a position quicker. We're gonna keep going on finding, and maybe we end up with 7. Maybe we end up with 6, maybe we end, yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and again, ASEC is also working, well, they're looking, the tough part is some is wording in IEPs, some is working with our team to see how we can combine classes and kids. You can't, when we're trying to mainstream, you can't put, you know, all the special ed kids in one room, but can we group? And some of that is done. And some, we think that's where we're gonna gain from. But we're just not to a perfect number. Again, I don't think you're gonna get 20 yeah, you know, and we're gonna get what we can. I will say whatever we can come as a group that is what we feel appropriate.
What's our per para, per pupil right now? Is it like, it's high, right?
Well,
Compared to
compared to
Other communities.
other,
correct, and that's why we think there's some, but again, it's
it's 14 and 11.
in talking with Tiffany is, well, no,
It's not that much.
but it's a process, because like she said, you know, Thief River's worked to, you know, bring their number down, but it's taken numerous years. It wasn't that they went from, you know, 100 to whatever they're at, you know, in 1 year. And so it's gonna be, you know, a process. And so again, they're very valued. I don't want anyone leaving
No.
thinking, you know, that we just, you know.
But it also is a position where there's a lot of turnover,
Mhm.
and so there could be just attrition here.
But again, we have to cover our students,
Yes,
the ones that, and
absolutely.
get them grouped appropriately. And
There's requirements.
but again, that
Yeah.
maybe that'll come out to be 200. Maybe it'll come out to be 175. Yeah, you know,
So I had 2 teachers being removed from this list, which was amounted to 150,000, just dividing that 600,000 we have here divided by the number of teachers listed. And then I also had a third of that para reductions taken off, so 50,000 for that. That's where I ended up.
Other thoughts?
How much did you say your
Hmm?
figures took off, Matt?
That would, mine might be a little bit different from Lynn's, but, I had roughly, that ended up being with about 750,000 worth of cuts and about, put us at like a $400,000 deficit.
I guess I'm gonna, and again, I'm just gonna go back, you know, for time being, if you pull SRO, that's just, let's
Yep.
use an easy number, 100,000. If you pause or don't do anything with the activities, roughly 35. If you add the social worker back in, I'm gonna recommend you use an $80,000 number.
Okay.
Well, I'm just,
You have to be realistic on.
well,
what
but,
us to replace or what we.
But that makes sense, I
And-
understand.
okay. And then if you, like I say, hold off an elementary position and add one for third grade, that's two, you might as well add 150,000. And again, keep in mind also, is if we do something levy or bond wise, the lower we go, the worse our rating's gonna be. You know, that's.
Right.
something
And
that,
it's,
And my intention with this was to try and,
No, but the
Doesn't
group
work
that
that
did
way.
our bond rating this time, and Carla and I had to sit through an interview, you know, talked about, we were right on, you know, close to that 8%. And they advised, it's not that we won't get, you know, but you go from the A+ or AA+ or whatever we were, you know, which will just mean, you know, possibly a higher rate. I'm not gonna say, you know, it goes from whatever, 4%.
which that money goes,
Percent, but it will affect. And so just like I say, we're at 7.2 or something right now. If everything holds, we're gonna go down, you know, into the sixes then. It's just something to think about. I mean, not that you can't. There's places that are in SOD that are getting, you know, levies, you know, bonds or things.
I'll say this, other than, you know, that SRO having conversations with the city and that one teacher. And I know it might be a little different because I mean, I coached cross country for 5 years for the district too and everything. In order to be responsible, I'm okay with all these cuts. And I know it's not popular and I know doesn't necessarily have to be forever. But I think in order to be good for our school going forward, that's where I'm at. And it's a little bit harder because I've seen these for 3 weeks, you know, roughly before it became public. So I've had time to try and make changes or try to look at things differently and try to add pieces here and there. And, but I trust the administration that we have in place, to do the job that they had to do. And it wasn't easy.
In the other piece, and again, like I said, I'm behind. I played activities, participated. You know, that is one that it can be reduced right now. And, you know, if things change or we work with the groups, come up with some other idea, you know, or whatever.
Right. And you, like
I mean,
we had conversations
That's
that
like
you
a
said,
teacher that we're gonna reduce, not say you can't bring, you know, and I've said, like, if kindergarten, all of a sudden we end up with 10, 15 more kids, we're gonna add a section.
right.
Do that, you know, but.
This is just on April 13th. This has nothing to do with what could change.
And it may not, I don't want to
Right.
pretend, yeah, you know, I'm just saying that is one that they're gonna finish their seasons, you know, and obviously, start planning for the year ahead, but if you wanted more conversation, either way it can go.
If we take out one teacher and we take out the social worker,
Take out or add one in?
add them back.
Add 'em back.
Okay.
Come off the list.
So, yeah, take them off the list. And we take off the SRO and we take off boys and girls cross country and speech. We are saving, our running total would be 842,000.
Which is what?
And you did the math
Or-
with the social worker at the number that, or that Mr. Grover said, right?
Yes.
67,000.
No, I took off
No,
80.
80.
We took 80, oh.
So what would our budget become like in a deficit of what?
Roughly 400,000.
So $400,000 deficit with a $500,000 levy doesn't really leave us any money to do anything else.
Well, but there again, you have buses coming, that the
Right,
levy
exactly.
piece is a whole nother conversation.
Right.
You know, and
For next year, could we do more transportation where we cut the students who are closer to the school, that it's safe for them to walk and everything?
Well,
How much would that
anything,
save?
and again, if you recall in the budget when we
Mhm.
presented, you know, there are options. I mean, there are districts that put a mile radius,
Yeah,
2 mile radius. 2 is the max
Yep,
by statute.
as long as it's not
Again-
unsafe, right?
again,
For age.
Families, you know, some families, yeah, I mean, Grand Forks has a different process than we do, you know, but anything is possible. There are other options, but,
We'd have to weigh the savings versus how much of a.
impact it has. I mean, there's other things, you know, 4-day week some schools are looking at. You know, again, not a huge savings. It impacts kids and families as well. And I mean, good and bad, you know.
Lynn, will you go through that list again?
Sure. So we leave the paras where it's at. Okay. We add $80,000 back in for the social worker. We're taking off 75 for one teacher.
So is that gonna take care of the third grade
Yeah.
position then is the thought?
Yep.
Okay,
Shift somebody.
Yep,
shift. yeah.
shift somebody up. You add back in 105 for the SRO. And you add back in 36,527 for the sports activities, sorry.
That's okay.
Did I do that math wrong?
It's 2 8, I didn't, just in my head, I mean, 150, just under 3, I think, are right around 300,000,
Off of the running total.
correct?
So I did do that.
And then we would come back to you, like I say, when we start, you know, the people and like I say, it's gonna shift.
We'd have different numbers then.
So we could approve that tonight,
And then
but we do reserve the right to make changes in the future.
You do, the only thing, we're gonna come, like I say, if that is what's approved, we will then work through the stranding process.
Yes.
And whether we set a meeting for next Monday or sooner, to me, sooner is better for people that are gonna be
Okay.
affected.
next day.
Obviously, we have to have 72-hour notice, so we would have conversations over the next week. We actually are scheduled to meet tomorrow to see where we're at, meaning the admin team. We would come then with a special meeting to, and I'm just gonna use, you know, John is on the list and you have to approve those one by one. We will get the teachers and those affected. The paras were still, you know, like I say, I don't think they'll be ready by Monday. Cause that takes more of working through IEPs, who's gonna be where, how many sections do we have? And again, we don't wanna hold them forever. We're gonna work as quick as we can.
Yeah.
But, if we're breaking kids into classes, it depends, are there 6 sections, 7 sections, you know?
So I need to know before we take a vote how we feel about that. It'd be
Yeah.
$839,032.
Ask one question.
Yeah.
The student services position, so you kind of clarified that for me in an email. It covers para training, testing coordinator, achievement and integration grant, the ADIS grant, Indian education mentor program, teacher evaluation, curriculum review, and MTSS.
Redact, there's, like I said, there's more. I was rambling.
The work is still there. So where's the work going? with
So-
that?
so the
Are you ready to take that on? Because that's where that.
And again, I want to speak, again, if any of them want to speak, they can. We 100%, we support the position 110. But again, when it came to finding if we're going to cut X amount of teachers, paras, to not bring something from admin wise, you know, and I think this board kind of reduced it, you know, and again, I wasn't here at the time. You had a person that mainly focused on sped. It was kind of divvied out. It was tough. I'm not going to lie. But on the other hand, we just can't come to you with nothing from, I'm gonna say, admin kind
The
of.
question is where's the work going?
It's gonna be spread between all of us, meaning principals, we haven't divvied it out, but principals, APs, a little in the business office as far as like a star report, some of that stuff. That's the best thing I can tell you at this point. But
That's a lot.
it is a lot and it's a valued position. But on the other hand, every position on here is, just like every activity, and again, I wish none of it was here. And again, that position does a ton. But on the other hand, so does a third grade teacher, a second grade teacher, you know, and paras and so on. So that's the tough go right now.
I guess my next move would be, you've given feedback. Can the committee take it and look at things, and then we meet again next Monday? We do the special meeting? Do we have to make a decision tonight?
You don't have to, but I mean, to come up, I'm gonna tell you to come up with, say, take that off that number and come up with another 300. I'm just being honest. I don't know where.
I'm gonna trust what the committee comes up with, and like I said, I'm gonna trust the administrators, but I feel like this was fast. We got this.
Well, we've been talking, like I said, I've talked to you several meetings here that, we've been working, but then when the tough decision, we drew a line. Now we got to make these decisions. And yeah, each building would advocate for a lot of stuff that's on here. But on the other hand, if we don't take, and you can have us look for other things, but I mean, teachers are our number one expense. Like I said, and if you don't want to go 25, 26, 24, with some of the lower and getting up into the low 30s at the high school. And again, high school won't be exact, as I mentioned in the email, and you know that. If you have an average of 30, it's probably gonna be 25 and 35 in a couple or something. We don't know, again, we can't take it all to Paris. You just can't, They didn't, lose an AP, and I'm gonna look at Josh, you're in the buildings. How many of the principals and APs are going steady, just like teachers are, just like the social workers are, just like that was a conversation as well, you could look at, going to teens in each building instead of APs. It saves a little, but there's certain things they can't do, and that was not a route at this point that we, brought forward.
The hard part is gonna be, how many times do you want to have a meeting like this? Because you're gonna ask for more reductions and we want to keep this thing, but you're still gonna be like, hey, we got to cut another 300,000. So they're gonna go, admin's gonna go back and look at everything again and bring another list, and then we're gonna have the same kind of a meeting over again. And then people are, it's tough. And it sucks so bad for everything here. But for the long term of our school and the future of all of our kids, I just don't know if I can go any other way.
So originally, Kevin brought us 900,000.
800 was just a number that I'd throw. And again, not knowing exactly, I mean, we could come better, like I talked about legislatively. They're still going after, compensatory.
So say, like,
Negatively
if you get into that though and say something changes, I mean, there's nothing that says we can't bring any of these positions back either.
Well, it's going to be tough as time goes on because
Right.
you get
As you get closer to the next school year. And I agree with that.
Anyways. My thoughts were like, you brought 800 to begin with. We are the ones who asked you to go back and do the full amount.
Mhm.
So, and now there's a little bit of recanting. Like, because the reality is we don't want to reduce any of this. And so I think there's got to be a happy medium somewhere. Maybe it's not the full 1.1, maybe it's a
Yeah.
little more than 800. But if we take everybody's concerns off, we're around that 850 mark, somewhere in there, 830, 850, somewhere in there. I did math, you did math, they're different, but.
Well, no, I didn't add them with the calculator. I just, yeah.
So do we,
Pretty close to where we
But
talked
we're-
about first.
where we talked about first,
Mm.
and I'm gonna ask you, were you comfortable with 800,000 and leaving us in debt at 400,000?
Wow. Again, I'm doing it with eyes wide open because like I said, as we've talked, that we could come in 150, 200 the other way.
Right.
And then that grows.
Or you could come in 150, 200 the other way, which is better. It's just not the science that I can tell you 100%. I will bet my job on, we're going to be exact on this, type deal. So, I mean, that's the problem is, every month that goes by, I'm going to say Carla and I will be, closer to being, but again, even we go into the audit in August, special ed is still not finalized until just about April. So there's numbers that vary, and that's just not, it's not normal like our home budget where I can say, you know what,
Right.
here's where I'm at,
It's unfair. If
the
we're
other
gonna
thing-
cut, we need to cut because if there's people involved and their lives are involved and they need to move on if we're gonna cut.
And the other piece, just to throw it, because I'm guessing between what's here as well as online, we've talked about bringing the online, and that's, back as much as we can. We also have PSEO as a challenge. Those numbers keep growing and growing. We were talking about that today, and that's money out of your building, but yet your activities they can still participate in. We have to take care of that. Yeah, the number's not, we have to work on that. And I'm saying working on that as a school and a community. And again, it's not against the program, it's just we're offering a lot of the same stuff here. And if they can take college algebra here compared to the college, why not? We come out better, and then we can support more things.
So I guess I need a consensus on whether we wanna go the full 1.1 or if we wanna pull back and give him an $850,000-$900,000 running total.
What about, and just so, and again, would someone want to amend the first motion?
Oh, yeah.
Know what I'm saying and get a second, and then at some point you gotta take a vote, whether it's on the, taking these four, off. If that fails, then you go back, we're at the whole thing. What do you wanna do? Or, that,
Motions?
because if you vote on the whole thing, right,
Yes or no?
I wasn't
it's
gonna,
done.
I wasn't gonna vote on the whole thing. I was trying to get a consensus so I can make a motion.
But we're not supposed to straw poll either. So I want to be a little careful, if, you with me?
Raise my hands.
Yes.
Okay, then speak away.
What I would like to know is where everybody stands as far as like where they want the running total to be.
I do.
You want it lower?
No, I mean, I know where I stand.
Oh, gotcha. Am I guessing that you want the full?
Other than that teacher and possibly the SRO, I think it's in our best interest going forward. It's not in the best interest of everything, but from a business standpoint. Yeah.
Anybody else want to offer any opinions? I won't.
I would just say I would do a reduction and have the total cuts be 900,000. And however, I would take off or I would take off the SRO and I would take off a teacher. Other than that, I would leave everything else the same.
Any other opinions?
I know.
Or I would also like to ask for a free moment. If not, understood.
I'll give you 3 minutes. I'm not gonna give everybody 3 minutes.
I apologize for not filling out the appropriate paperwork as I was unaware, but I am Ross Pape, County Commissioner, and I do represent a lot of people in this room. I want to bring up raising activity fees. I think we're talking about sending people home without jobs. We're talking about these kids not having an opportunity to participate in things. And I noticed on the paperwork or the documents that we're talking about raising fees $25 per. I would like to suggest to the board of increasing that to cover and give these kids an opportunity. Give them an opportunity to work, give them an opportunity to raise money, fundraise, whatever they need to do, but we don't need to just be cutting things. I think there's an opportunity to raise fees, however that much may be. I have 3 kids, all 3 participate in activities. Sports, non-sports, all of the above. I know my wife and I would greatly support increasing these fees so our kids have an opportunity to participate. And I just want to emphasize again, we're talking about sending people home without jobs. And we need to go down to the core focus of the school of education. And these activities are extracurricular. And before we start cutting them, increasing the fees to offset some of these deficits, I think should be a big option. And I would encourage the board to think about that. But I greatly appreciate the time and I apologize for interrupting
Fine.
your meeting. I wasn't aware.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And again, not to get into conversation with Ross, keep in mind, there is a $25, which would raise from 75 at the middle school to 100 for each activity. And then there's a couple different rates at the high school, which would add 25. It was just across, you see what it generated. I haven't surveyed other communities around you. Something we can obviously do. I mean, you can always increase it more. You know, that's just part of this. If this is approved, we'll bring an actual motion at a next meeting or something to go from the different amounts up. I can look at others. Keep in mind, we also have families that do struggle to pay too, you know,
And those fees have recently been increased.
Doubled.
Doubled, yeah. We've recently increased those
That was
fees.
We doubled those, like,
Couple
within,
years.
yes. 2-3 years ago, we doubled the fees. Already once.
Not saying we can't.
No,
Right.
just saying that it's been.
Well, and cutting it doesn't mean that it can't be funded from another source. It's still associated with the school, correct? It just means we're cutting the funding from the school.
No.
No, so if we cut speech, that means they can no longer have speech even if they raise the funds
well,
themselves.
it would have to,
It'd be a club.
well, or like I say,
Co-op.
would have to be approached, you know, down the road of here's the, you know, here's the plan. I mean, there are things that, you know, get funded at different levels. But I'd have to check in if you have no funding in, you know, like the, trap, you know, came on as a club and then, I mean, for the most part, you don't put money in. We support it as an organization. Scott's not here. We might pay the $100 to, you know, make it a activity with the high school league. But other than that, we don't pay coaches. We don't, you know, that's a piece that is also negotiated. Keep in mind that came from different groups. How about cutting, you know, coaching fees or, you know, stipends or different, well, that's a negotiated piece that, you know.
The cost to fund the cross-country and the speech programs comes out to be 1/10% of our school budget. I don't, to me, these kids, you know, it's, a lot of it is that it's year round for them, being excited about it, preparing for it. It's a big part of their lives. I don't think it's worth putting these kids, I mean, like I said, I appreciate the committee trying to reach every avenue encompass in our school district for budget cuts. I just don't know if it's worth what we're putting those kids through to gain that little bit of, to cut off the deficit.
So you have a motion then?
Do I have a motion? Yeah, I made the first motion, so I'm gonna move to approve the budget reductions at $850,000 and we'll have a special meeting next week.
Okay, so can I ask, so if that is approved, are we moving forward with any staffing, you know, over the next week or not, or we're gonna come back? I'm just asking for, when you just say that, you didn't take certain things off or not?
I wasn't going to take certain things off. I was going to
Okay,
leave it up to administration to take those certain things off.
and so then we would come back like tonight without any names or faces attached to certain things?
I would rather you come back with faces and names. And so we can do that one fall swoop.
But then doesn't he need to know what things?
Yeah.
Well, what I'm getting at is if the group, and I'm just gonna speak for him, you know, if we take SRO, okay, that's a set number. If we, you know, think adding the third grade position back, you know, comes into play, okay, now that's only three, I'm gonna say 3 elementary reductions for the most part instead of 4. You know, we're gonna come with positions. I don't wanna go talk to those people, and again, you have to approve it. But if it's for somewhat not gonna be supported, you know what I'm saying? Same at the high school. We're gonna bring certain ones. You know, if you just say 50, yeah. I mean, I guess I would like a little more, same with, you know, student services, you know, if we say no on that and bring more teaching, but I mean, or less you know, it just,
All right,
it's the list that was brought. And as much as it's hard, I guess I would like saying,
sure.
Mhm.
I don't even know how to make this motion. Okay,
how about to amend, and I'm just throwing an idea, amend without, you know, X, Y, and Z or
Sure.
whatever that may be.
I'll move to approve the budget reductions for the 2026-27 school year without the social worker reduction, without one teacher bargaining unit, without the SRO, and without activity reductions.
Second.
That's 842,000 around. That would be the running total.
So
Okay,
this,
questions or discussion on that motion?
So just so everyone's aware, we amended the first motion. Okay, so again, can have more discussion if a vote's taken. If that passes, we're done. You
Right.
know, right now until
Yep.
if it doesn't, then you're back to the original and you have more discussion or.
I mean, the preface for all of this is it can change at any time. But this is what I would like to approve to.
so it doesn't mean that the things are all, that means we're putting actual names and faces
Correct.
and then seeing what that fall, how the chips fall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the budget reductions with those positions added back in, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for everybody. That was a lot. Okay, 8.2 is to accept donations to the school district.
I will make a motion to approve the donations from the EGF boosters to soccer for new soccer nets in the amount of $5,535. A donation from the EGF boosters to girls hockey for a team overnight in the amount of $1,710.61. A donation from East Grand Forks boosters to girls basketball for a team overnight in the amount of $2,101.08. A donation from the EGF boosters to softball for a pitching machine in the amount of $2,900. A donation from Deeks for the Outsiders Day to CMS for Outsiders Day in the amount of $1,331.46. And a donation from Plains Chiropractic to CMS for Outsiders Day in the amount of $300. Total donations today are $13,878.15.
I'll second.
Any questions or discussion on donations? All those in favor of accepting the donations, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 9.0 is payment of claims and accounts.
I'll make the motion to approve the payment of K-12 bills 131411 through 131546 and electronic fund transfers in the amount of $1,052,223.44.
I'll second. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of paying the bills, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 10.0 board member comments.
So
Oh,
and before I,
yes,
so are we gonna do a special meeting?
yes,
Okay, so are we, does next Monday work?
Monday.
Monday evening?
Is that okay for you and?
No, I think we can, you know, like I say, we won't have, you know, the paras at
Sure.
that time, but we can have the other staff and.
If we waited like. a
I
few
don't know how
days,
quick it's good.
Okay.
It's just gonna take some more planning as far as, you know, the sections now and where students are gonna go and.
We need a
and
special meeting for it. We can't put it with the one in 2 weeks.
We gotta let these people know right away.
Well,
I mean, they need to know.
I would, it's just 2 weeks of people wondering because.
Sure. I didn't know if you needed more time.
No, I
Okay.
think we will, if for some reason we can plan on it now, if we don't, because again, we have to have the agenda out. And then the other thing I would ask, and just something to think about, is typically on a special meeting, we don't have open forum. You know, so if, I don't want to change that practice because it's a
Yep.
best practice. If you do want, you could do a work session before and then we start, you know, it's gonna be public what's out there. You know, and let people talk. It's up to you. I mean, I'm just asking because I don't want all of a sudden, you know, get a packed house and people, oh, I thought we could.
Do we have to decide that right now?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Well, I mean, we can set a meeting.
I think the special meeting is.
I mean, we'll need a special meeting, but
Yeah.
whether or
Yes.
not we have the work
Whether
session
we have
or
the
not.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
We just will advertise it 72 hours in advance,
Correct.
whatever we're gonna have.
Oh, yeah, so we have till Thursday.
Okay. Board member comments. Easton, do you have anything to add
All
tonight?
right, I would just say thank you to all the students who donated to the blood drive last week. Choir competed last week in Crookston Festival, and we received all superior ratings. Eastside Idol was today at 11 a.m. and everyone who performed did amazing, and they will all move on to Grand Cities Idol next Monday. National Honor Society acceptance letters are being mailed out today, so keep looking in the mail for those and later this week. And congratulations to our knowledgeable team for competing in state last week on Friday. As of everything else that was discussed tonight, I would think I have talked to students and staff. And I think the SOR
That's our officer, yep.
officer would be top priority
Thank you.
among everyone.
Matt?
Thank you for putting a positive note on the meeting tonight. It's been a long one. Yeah, it was just a tough meeting. Thank you, everybody, for speaking, and good luck to the speech team at their section tournament tomorrow. That's all I've got.
Josh?
Yeah, it was a brutal meeting tonight, and I just think it's nice to have an audience when we're here. I know a lot of people are online and stuff like that, but we do put a lot of time into caring about our students and our schools and the administration that's here, and the support that all of you guys give for all your programs and what you do for the community is really grateful. And I'm really grateful for that. So thank you.
Lindsay?
I guess I just want to say, I think that everybody can tell how hard these decisions are based on the length of the meeting here today and how we're just still not really wanting to do any of these cuts, but have really nowhere to go but this direction at this point. So we'll continue to be mindful of everybody's wants and needs and try to do the best that we can. It's all that we can do, and just hope that we can continue to, have your support and know that we really are trying to do our best up here. So thank you for coming and speaking on your thoughts on things too.
Amanda?
I want to say thank you to administration for coming up with a plan. I can't even imagine how hard it was, me being on the outside and like looking at the numbers and just what you guys brought. Mind boggling, and it was tough for us up here. So the stress that had to be on you guys had to be horrendous. So I appreciate for the hours and the hard work that took. And yeah, tonight was difficult, and it might be more difficult later, but we have a starting point, which is what we needed.
Yep. Pauline? Okay. I want to second, third, fourth, everybody's appreciation for everybody in here tonight. This hasn't been this packed since masking, so this is kind of
We don't want to go back
we don't want to go back there either, but I know it's a difficult subject, and it's difficult for administrators and teachers and all staff. And so we appreciate your opinions, and we take them to, to heart dearly, and your emails too, because we read all of those as well. Maybe some not so much. I only got yours, Chuck, right before the meeting, so, but when we make it, but we make an attempt at least to read all the emails, so thank you for that. It was a tough meeting. More to come. There is a special meeting that is going to be on Monday, April 20th at 5:30 in this very room. Again, that is not an open forum meeting because it is a special meeting. But you're more than welcome to come and be a spectator. And so 12.0 is to adjourn the regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.